I'm Dana Shoaf, editor of Civil War Times Magazine, and behind the camera is Melissa Winn, director of photography for the magazine and camera person extraordinaire. Welcome to our first Monday's broadcast for October, and we are in beautiful, sunny, and breezy Colonial Williamsburg on Duke of Glocester Street. Now, Melissa, can you pan to your left so people can see the reconstructed colonial capital? And of course, Williamsburg was the capital of Virginia from 1699 to 1780. So, as many of you I'm sure are aware, it was restored by John Rockefeller in the 1920s, earlier in the 20th century, to its 18th century appearance. If you want to spin back around and take a look down Duke of Glocester Street in the other direction, looking west, you can't see it, but at the end of the street there is the College of William and Mary, another very fine colonial era institution. So I come here a lot because I love the 18th century history as well, and I really feel honored actually that I know a lot of people that work here. Williamsburg is a fantastic place to visit. There's a lot of tradespeople here. I think they're the best at what they do really in the world. Wheelwrights, carpenters, blacksmiths, tinsmiths, shoemakers, fantastic stuff to see. But it also has a strong Civil War connection. And in the 1860s, of course, this is no longer the capital, so it was a much smaller town than it was earlier on. There was only about 1,100 people lived here during the Civil War period, according to the 1860 census. So it's sort of a small, sort of sleepy town. It looked a lot different than it does now. A lot of these colonial buildings, like the Capitol that you saw, were not here. Some of these other buildings on the street are reconstructed, and there were mid-19th century buildings in their place. And a perfect example of that is the house behind me. This is the Palmer House. It is an original house, but during the 1860s, it was owned by a man named William Vest. And in 1857, he added a wing to the house to the left of the door. And there were 2 windows below and 2 windows above. And of course, I want to mention that there's a lot of tourists here today, so you're going to see people walking through and hear some possible ambient noise, like a guy impersonating a horse right behind us right now. But anyway, so we'll do our best we can with that. But this house was about twice as large as it is now because Rockefeller tore that wing off during the Restoration period to bring it back to its 18th century appearance. It's not open to the public. People actually still use this as a residence. But Williamsburg is going to feature prominently during the Peninsula Campaign, and that takes place from March until July of 1862. And it's the first major Union effort to capture Richmond. Williamsburg is about 50-some miles from Richmond to the west and about 33 miles from Fort Monroe at the end of the peninsula to the east. And of course, the peninsula is formed by the York River to the north and the James River to the south. Major General George B. McClellan's plan was to bring the Army of the Potomac to Fort Monroe, disembark them from ships, and then march westward up the peninsula and hopefully capture Richmond. He's going to move slowly. He lays siege to Yorktown for several weeks. But on May 5th, 1862, just east of Williamsburg here, the Battle of Williamsburg is fought. It's the first major fight of the Peninsula Campaign, and it's a fairly large battle. It was fought during a rainy, miserable day. Now, imagine this street choked, not with people wearing cocked hats or tourists, but Confederate soldiers retreating through here on May 5th because eventually their holding action is going to give way and the Federals are going to hold the ground. Joe Johnston, the commander of the Confederate forces at the time, is going to keep retreating. Joe Johnston had headquartered in this house. Another Confederate general named John Magruder had also used this house for his headquarters. And on May 6th, the day after the Battle of Williamsburg, Major General George McClellan will enter town and he will take over this house as his headquarters. The Vest family has left. Vest was the richest merchant in town, and he's taken his family and he's gone. He's left a caretaker, but the house is more or less vacant. So McClellan moves in. He will write his wife Ellen a note and a letter and say, I am headquartering in a charming house. It has a beautiful garden and conservatory. It's a very fine old house. And he will go on to state, it's a beautiful little town, and he wished she was with him so he could spend some more time sightseeing with her in Williamsburg, just like people come and do today. McClellan will stay in this house for about 10 days or so, and then he will move west toward Richmond with the rest of his army. The Union Army's provost marshal, or their version of the military police, will then use this house as its headquarters from then on. Now this area will change hands. During the 7 Days Campaign, which follows the Peninsula Campaign, the Confederate forces pushed back McClellan back down the peninsula. But later in the war, this sort of becomes an area of flux, and the Federals will once again occupy this town in 1863. And the Provost Marshal will again use this as a headquarters. In October of 1863, the Provost Marshal, or the military police, goes out through a patrol on this town, which is controlled by martial law. They encounter a drunken Union soldier named William Boyle on York Street. They bring him back here for processing, but they didn't disarm him. Boyle will pull out a pistol and shoot on the steps of the Palmer House, and those are the original steps. He will shoot Lieutenant W.W. Discoway on those steps and kill him. So he kills him right on those steps. Boyle is subdued, he's going to be executed, but Lincoln orders a stay of his execution. And then Boyle is taken to Fort Magruder, just east of town, and we're going to learn about that a little bit later on. And he's held there, but he manages to escape and goes to the Confederate lines. So it's just one of the examples of how this town, this small town at the time, is turned upside down by all this military activity during the Civil War. So I hope you've enjoyed our introduction, our first Monday broadcast for today. Later on, in a short amount of time, we're going to head east to Fort Magruder. We're going to talk more about the Battle of Williamsburg and some other things related to the Civil War here in Williamsburg. And we're also going to meet a friend of mine, and we're going to talk to him about what he does to help preserve Civil War history. And I think you're going to recognize some of his work. So I hope you'll join us later in just a short amount of time. This
you
is
want
Dana.
to say hi to Pamela Berry?
Oh, Pamela Berry. Other people saying hi.
And
hi,
Mike
Pam
Placido.
Hi, how you doing?
And John Barton.
Hey, John, how are you? Thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. I really do. So we're going to sign off now, and we'll see you later from the site of Fort Magruder. This is Dana Shoaf and Melissa Winn for Civil War Times, signing off from the Palmer House on Duke of Glocester Street in beautiful Colonial Williamsburg.